Chair recognizes Mr. Donalds from Florida.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mayor Bowser, it's good to see you. Chief Conte, it's been a while. You haven't been back for 2 years or so. It's good to see you. Mr. Donahue, first time. Mr. Graves, bro, you need to do your job. I mean, let's just be very clear. You know, obviously, you have a responsibility to the residents of the district in a myriad of ways. I think, you know, my colleague talked about that and went in some heavy detail there. But if you're not going to do the job of actually standing behind Chief Conte and the work that his men and women do with the Metropolitan Police Department, then you're selling them down the river, and with them, the residents of D.C. And even the tourists that come to D.C. But, you know, they're the ones that live here. They ride the bus. They get on the metro. They're going to school. They're going to work. And what everybody wants is just to be safe. And you're not holding up your end of the bargain. I've seen MPD all over D.C. They're out here every single day. They are here. It's very clear when they're on the scene. But you're not doing your job. So I just find it to be disgusting, frankly. Just uphold the law, enforce the law, and that actually will make the job easier for the chief and for the mayor to do their jobs. Mayor Bowser, real quick, you know, when the Oversight Committee was investigating January 6th, you were not here. I don't know what was going on, so no need to go down that road. But I really had a question about, you requested troops on you addressed National Guard troops on December 31, 2020. Is that correct?
That sounds right, but I would want to confirm the dates.
That's fine. That's fine. That's fine. Based upon any recollection that you have, what was the rationale for requesting National Guard troops?
We wanted to make sure that our city blocks were protected, and the chief decided we were in that transition week, so the chiefs decided that we wanted to create a traffic box around certain parts of our downtown, and the best use of resources would be National Guard instead of MPD, so that MPD could be available for law enforcement. So that was our request.
Okay, so quick follow-up to that, because, you know, I remember it, having gone through orientation here before I got sworn in as a member of Congress, that during that time period, you know, to the pandemic and everything else, there was no traffic in D.C., not like it is today. Like, nobody was driving through the streets of D.C. during that time period. So, like, and this is a legitimate question, was the concerns purely traffic corridors in the district for the date of January 6th?
Let me ask the chief to talk about how we
Sure, Chief Conte, if you can. That'd be great.
Yeah, so traffic is part of the concern. You know, certainly when we create traffic boxes, and you know we're expecting a lot of people in our city, we don't want to mix people and cars. So creating that space where for people who are expressing their First Amendment rights could peacefully be in the street or on the sidewalk or whatever, and not be hindered by cars and buses moving about.
Well, Chief, I just want to reclaim my time. I'm a minute 28. That's no disrespect to what you're saying. And my coughing, no disrespect to either.
No worries.
So real quick, now, in a letter that was sent on January 5th, Mayor Bowser, you stated that the National Guard, that you were accepting the support, but you wanted them to be in an unarmed capacity. Is that correct? Or Chief Conte, can you corroborate that? Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So, and I thank you for that. These are some of the things that we just want to clarify. And I think here's the overarching point. And to be frank, honestly, Mayor Bowser, this really ain't got nothing to do with you. I think this is just a general point of what happened, when, and why. And I think, actually, last question for you. When your request for National Guard troops obviously they were answered and you were given whatever you needed. Is that correct?
We were given, I believe, some of what we requested.
Okay. Were there any limits that came from the Secretary of the Army?
Yes.
Okay. Can anybody stipulate what that was?
Yeah, a couple of things. So we wanted, well, first of all, the limitation was we could not change their assignments without first receiving approval from the Secretary of the Army. We could not move National Guard members anywhere east of 9th Street Northwest. We couldn't move them there. And another thing we wanted was a quick reaction force, members of the National Guard to be able to respond. I don't think we received that resource either.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
All right. Last point I'll make, Mr. Chairman, and I know I'm slightly over my time. One thing that was clear in previous testimony in this committee, corroborated by this testimony today, is that, troops from National Guard were authorized by the president at the time, Donald Trump, on January 4. They were authorized. It was testified in this committee they were authorized. D.C. was able to take advantage of them in the capacity that D.C. wanted to save for the couple of requests that you also wanted. One thing it's important to indicate, Mr. Chairman, is that for National Guard troops to be deployed to the Capitol, it requires the Capitol Police Board to actually issue a state of emergency for troops to come on Capitol grounds. And the police board is made up of the architect of the Capitol, the head of Senate security, the head of House security, and the chief of the Capitol Police. And by my understanding, 3 of those 4 people report to the Speaker of the House. And the Speaker of the House at that time was Nancy Pelosi. So when we want to talk about National Guard being here and the timetable of them getting here, it's important to understand that there were National Guard in the District of Columbia, and their limitation of coming to the Capitol was not due to anybody else because the president is not authorized to deploy troops to the Capitol, separation of powers. It is at the hands of the Speaker of the House. And with that, I yield, and I apologize for being a minute and 24 over.
Gentleman yields back.
Will the gentleman yield? With that, I will yield the balance of my time to my ranking member.
Ms. Brown, thank you so much. You started off by saying something pretty profound, which is we are here instead of doing the business of the American people because the Republicans have offered us no positive agenda in their year in office. We know we've wasted countless weeks in them just trying to pick a speaker, and we've wasted countless weeks with their inertia and their do-nothing policies. But, Ms. Brown, I don't know if you recall, I just don't want people having to take your word for it. I think numerous Republicans have gotten up on the floor of the House complaining about the fact that they have no agenda. I think our colleague Chip Roy from Texas said that the Republicans have not given him one thing, a single thing, I remember him saying, to campaign on. So I just want to ask you, when you're saying that they have no agenda, that's not a partisan point. You're getting that from Republicans, aren't you?
That is correct.
One of our colleagues said that there was Trump derangement syndrome, and of course, Trump derangement begins with Donald Trump himself. He thinks he has a legal right to assassinate U.S. citizens. He thinks he can grab women by their genitals, although that's not the word that he used. He said that if Joe Biden is reelected president, there will be World War II. He is obviously deranged and disoriented, but the real Trump derangement syndrome that I see is those people who cannot break from Donald Trump after he's proven himself to be completely and totally unworthy of your support. Because I'm looking at talented, gifted people on the other side of the aisle, the ones who have not left Congress in frustration or because they've broken with Donald Trump and clashed with him. But I'm still looking at people who have their wits about them, I think, but you're acting like cult members, like you're sleeping on the basement of a cult, listening to tapes all night. And I beg you to get over your Trump derangement syndrome. Thank you very much for yielding, Ms. Brown.
Chair recognizes Mr. Donalds from Florida for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. A couple of things. First, it was said in this hearing, Mr. Chairman, about you specifically, that you repeatedly said you would give Mr. Biden any opportunity, he could choose which one, to come and speak in front of this committee. He could do it by deposition, he could do it by open hearing. It was up to him. The truth of the matter, though, is that the chairman's words are not binding. Like no other member's words of Congress are really not binding. The binding article.
Point of order. Does the chairman agree with that? Point of order. Does the chairman agree?
Are you going to restore my time?
Point of order. Just point of order.
Okay.
Does the chairman agree that the chairman's words are not binding on the committee?
That's not a point of order. It has nothing to do with the order of this hearing. Thank you. Can I go back to 4 minutes and 34 seconds? That's where I was before I was interrupted by Mr. Raskin.
Yes. Reset the clock.
Thank you. What is binding is the actual written document, the written language in the subpoena, because a subpoena from this committee is also signed off on by the clerk of the House. That is the binding document that matters here. That is what governs. That's number one. Number two that was said in this hearing. It was said that our witnesses said that there was no basis for an impeachment. But remember, members on the Democrat side of the aisle, what was said by Mr. Turley at the time was that there was plenty of evidence for the continuation of an impeachment inquiry. And the purpose of that hearing was the relevance basis for an impeachment inquiry. The House has now voted for an impeachment inquiry. And one of the first things that the House did after the vote of an impeachment inquiry was to subpoena Hunter Biden to appear. Hunter Biden has evaded that subpoena. So flagrantly did he evade it that he decided to show up at the Senate side to give a press conference, and Eric Swalwell, a member of the House, helped him get that time on the Senate side to give a press conference. That's a flagrant violation of a congressional subpoena. Secondarily, he has the gall to show up here when we're actually discussing contempt. And he didn't stay. He was sitting right over there. He's not here now. He said he wants to talk. He could have stayed through the whole proceeding. He chose to leave. That's his business. But he was subpoenaed to come here. Back in December, he chose not to of his own volition. He's in violation of that subpoena, a subpoena that was executed with the signature of the clerk of the House of Representatives. That is the document that is binding. That's what we work off of. Mr. Chairman, I actually want to submit for the record an article from The Hill written by Jonathan Turley, and it is titled Eric Swalwell and the Politics of Contempt.
Without objection, so ordered.
Thank you. I'm glad something got admitted to the record. A couple other points. One quick point I want to make, and this is in reference to the minority's report about this $7.8 million. I want the minority to understand one very important distinction between Presidents Biden and President Trump. President Trump has an international real estate portfolio that he has amassed over decades. I'm quite sure if you go back through all of the hotel receipts before he was president of the United States, that you had foreign dignitaries staying at Trump hotels all across the world.
Will the gentleman yield?
I'm not going to yield, Mr. Raskin. I'm making a point. Because they're actually very nice hotels. They look good. People like staying there. President Trump was not running the Trump Organization when he was president of the United States. To my recollection, Eric Trump, the president's son, was actually running the Trump Organization when President Trump was president of the United States. So if he had a portfolio of hotels and people choose, through Expedia, through Kayak, through Hotels.com, if they choose to go and stay there, how is that the president being in violation of what the emoluments clause? That's what you're citing? Stop. Ladies and gentlemen, America, this is ridiculous. The Biden family has no business. They've never had a business except for politics. And the one thing that the Oversight Committee, in conjunction with the Ways and Means Committee and in conjunction with the Judiciary Committee, has always been able to demonstrate is that they shook down foreign nations for millions, 26 million at the latest count, and growing, millions. And there was never any business entity involved except public corruption and a pay-for-play scheme. The House Oversight Committee would like to get to the bottom of this under the impeachment inquiry of the House. We have questions for Hunter Biden. We issued a subpoena for him to answer said questions. He ignored a congressional subpoena as a private citizen. There are many attorneys on the other side of the aisle. If you had one of your clients in your private practice ignore a congressional subpoena as a private citizen, you would advise them not to, because they would be held in contempt and they would actually be punished by the Department of Justice. So I find it interesting to see today.
Yield so I
I'm
can
not
respond?
going to yield, Mr. Goldman, because I had a question for you earlier. You didn't want to take my question, so I'm not going to take yours. Thank you. So, in closing, I will say, private citizens, yes, they have a responsibility to answer congressional subpoenas. They do. Hunter Biden had it, and he was flagrant. He decided to give a press conference. So we're going to do this business, and he should be held in contempt by the full House of Representatives. I yield back, Mr. Chairman.
Very good. Chair now recognizes Ms. Norton from Washington, D.C. for 5 minutes.
I yield my 5 minutes to Mr. Raskin.
I'd like to thank the distinguished delegate from the District of Columbia, and I need to correct the record because of several false statements made about the Foreign Emoluments Clause, Article 1, Section 9, Clause 8, although I do appreciate the gentleman from Florida's attempt to at least engage on the matter of substance that was raised so powerfully by Ms. Crockett. Now, let's start with this. Article 1, Section 9, Clause 8 says that neither the president nor any member of Congress can receive a present and emolument, which means a payment, an office or a title